Hi gang, welcome back to the Honoriest Latina Ever. Today I was going down to my favorite place called Dunedin. They have a Saturday market where normally, I would just be minding my peas and carrots, I don't like peas and carrots actually. I barely like my veggies. I grew up in a Jersey home and like growing up, my peas and carrots came out of a can. And I ate white Wonder Bread and government food. And so I really didn't have the taste buds for the real stuff until I got on a farm. Long story short, the produce there is fabulous. It's great. You can get red bell peppers, grown here in the United States. So I was just minding my own business and I got my produce and I'm walking out of there and I see this guy with some newspapers. And he says, "Do you want to sign up for the Tampa Bay Times?" And I said, "Hell no." I said, "You can give me those free," and I would not read that liberal piece of crap because I feel like it's very biased. And he just looked shocked, like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm Puerto Rican, and I feel like their views don't represent the majority of people living in this country. So it's probably why their sales are down, and it's probably why they're doing so poorly." And so I just felt like they were like, how do you say it? They were mierda or shit, And so I said that, and he was Hispanic, so he knew what I was talking about, And as I was talking about them being shitty, he had expressed his views, his biased, racist views, saying that he thinks that our president is shit. And here is a guy peddling the Tampa Bay Times saying this about our president, disrespecting the president, disrespecting the Latina. And so I really got into it with him because he said that he had no morals, and I said, "So all the other people before him had morals?" And that's when I talk about morals. And so anyway, we got into a very heated discussion and people were crowding around us, and I'm throwing out my honoriness. And I wish that the cameras were rolling because I was defending Trump's honor. I was defending you, Mr. Trump, because I felt like the Tampa Bay Times was disrespecting our president. Okay. So I said, "I'm going to find out the owner of your paper, and I am going to have my way with him like I did Mr. Newhouse of the Oregonian." Well, he says, "Go right ahead." So, the Honorary Latina, after I have my words, I go and I sit on a park bench and I Google the Tampa Bay Times, who owns it. And then all of a sudden comes New York Times. I'm like, what? Like, what? So I'm thinking that because they have the Times in it, that whoever owns the New York Times owns the Tampa Bay Times, and all the Times are in cahoots together, and they're very liberal. They're a very liberal paper. So if you are a conservative and you're reading the Tampa Bay Times, you're funding socialism. So that's no bueno. We need to boycott that. It's not good. It's not good business, it's not good for the area, and it's not good for our voices, okay? So I'm going out of there with my bags, and here was supposed to be a nice day at the park, ruined by this guy peddling his papers and saying racist things that insulted my feelings and disrespected my culture and disrespected my country. And he was supposed to be representing the Tampa Bay Times. I don't know. He said his kids were doing very well. They went to good colleges and they had a good life. And I said, well, my daughter didn't have the very best life, grew up a very middle-class family. And one of them got into the, opiates and the heroin and the sex slave trafficking or whatever. Long story short, she didn't do very good. So anyway, nice that his kids were untouched by the open border situation because he could put them in a little glass cage or whatever, maybe he didn't put them in a glass cage. Maybe he just, he had enough money to pay for their shit. But long story short, not everybody is able to protect and shield their kids from all that badness that comes in. Okay, and so people think that the open borders don't affect them because they live in the gated communities and they live protected and their kids go to the best schools, but it affects all of us. Socialism affects all of us, because how did Venezuela go out of business and go bankrupt? And how did all these like places around the globe, you know, go belly up? And it was because of massive poverty, okay? And what happened was, you know, socialism kicks in. The government's going to be everything to everybody. Eventually, the only problem with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money. Margaret Thatcher said that, and it's a true thing. Now, you can call Mr. Trump a piece of shit till the cows come home, but you kind of overlook the fact that Bill Clinton happened to be the biggest womanizer on the planet. The biggest one, and he was really the biggest piece of shit on the planet too, next to his wife Hillary, and nobody said a word about his morals or his integrity or whatever. But the fact is that, you know, he had this open border vision like all the rest of them. The thing about it is the two-party system robbed us people of our rights, and when we keep the border open, we keep the endless bountiful benefits going to the illegals. So if we don't have enough for our veterans, and if we don't have enough for our PERS pension, and if we don't have an endless money tree growing in our backyard, you might want to ask yourself why. And if you think that that cheap labor that's picking the fruit and procreating freely and getting free government subsidies is really the cheapest thing that you could possibly imagine, you better think again about that, because we're not tacking on all the health benefits for their babies from birth to 18, or the education or the college and all the other things and the crime that goes along with it. So I think the better investment would be fruit picking machines like other countries that are successful. And I think that eventually, you know, good fences make good neighbors. You know, I love my neighbor, but I don't want him to come over and pick the peaches off my peach tree, you know. Nor do I think the communist down there that's all for communism would like it if I went and took his newspaper, the Tampa Bay Times, read it, and then returned it and said, hey, thanks for sharing, commie. You know, we're in it together, homie. But you know what? I get censored on the media, or out on Facebook, or out on wherever, Twitter. They banned me from Twitter. But you know what, Chelsea, what's her name? Chelsea, whatever her freaking name is, the comedian, Handler, that's it. Well, anyway, the handler, she's still on there. She's such a cow. She had a Chewy guy from Mexico, a little Mexican midget, and they didn't call her racist. I mean, she made fun of that guy daily, called him her little butt nugget. You know, that's just that is the disgracing to Mexican midgets, you know. She is disrespecting some culture there, lady. You got some issues. But anyway, you know, she doesn't get kicked off Twitter, but if you call her a stinking slut puppy hoe or whatever, you're out of there. You know, I'm just saying that could be my opinion. It could be somebody else's opinion. I'm not necessarily calling you that, Chelsea. I just don't like your ugly horse face. I just think you're a foul and disgusting, awful human being with a big mouth, and you're overpaid for whatever you do. I don't know what you do anymore, but anyway, and your politics is just downright shitty, and you're disrespectful to Mexican midgets. You're not very nice to Chewy. I wouldn't call anybody a butt nugget. That's not very nice. Anyway, guys, you have a great Saturday. And when you're out and about, make sure you stop by Dunedin and visit the Tampa Bay Times guy and tell him what you think of him. Adios.